Hello Rangers, and welcome to Ranger Ruby YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be going over camping safety tips to know before your camping trip. Let's go ahead and dive right on in. With spring break and summer just around the corner, I thought that this would be a good time to go over some good camping safety tips to know before you go. So let's go ahead and talk about some certain things that might be helpful to have in the back of your mind when planning your next trip. And tip number 1 is to know your limits. There are different levels of camping, from just setting up a tent in the backyard to setting up a tent on the side of a cliff. And know where you stand, who you're doing it with, and how it's gonna be, and your own limits before you plan your trip. Tip number 2 is to plan ahead of time. Setting. What's the environment gonna be like? Is it a beach, a desert, a forest? That'll totally change what you need to bring. What's the time of year? Think of the season. Winter, spring, summer, fall. Will you need to pack for hot or pack for cold? The difficulty level. Again, know your limits. Identify how accessible this campsite is. Can you drive up to the spot, or will you have to hike a little bit? Duration. How long will your trip be? This will determine how much food, clothing, water, and other supplies you'll need to pack for the trip. And tip number 3 is to check the park's regulations and rules and requirements. All of these are super important, because if you don't do this ahead of time, you might completely miss something that was totally important to know, such as the permits and regulations, the outdoor conditions, the food and storage disposal requirements, the fire regulations, the pet rules and requirements. There are so many things that vary park to park, so be sure to check the website before you go to know all this information. Tip number 4, be sure to know everything that you need to know in case of an emergency. So the first major tip is to let people know where you're going, especially if you're going camping alone or with just 1 or 2 people. Let a ton of people know where you're going, how long you're gonna be there, when to expect you back, what you're doing. That's just in case of an emergency and something goes wrong. The more the people know, the better. And there's some other basic safety tips, such as emphasize staying together and carrying whistles. Implement a buddy system. Tell children to hug a tree and adults to stay put in case of immediate danger. Make sure everybody is familiar with the route. Stay on the trail and don't take shortcuts. Make sure you carry a first aid kit. Be sure everyone is physically capable of doing this before setting out. And tip number 5 is to bring all the right gear, because if you go camping and you have too much stuff or you don't have the right things, it can go very wrong. You might want some navigational supplies, such as a map, a GPS, a compass. Always sun and insect protection. Super important. Insulation in case it's too hot or cold. Shelter, illumination, a first aid kit, fire, extra food and water. You'd be surprised how much food and water and how hungry you get when you go camping. Repair kits and tools, as well as communication devices. All of these things are super important to bring when camping. Also, pro tip is before you go camping, test your equipment. Make sure your tents work. Make sure your sleeping bags don't have a giant hole in the bottom of them. This is something super common that people tend to miss. Well, everybody, that's the end in today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up and comment down below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Also, be sure to click that red subscribe button and the little bell next to it to always know when I post new videos. Thank you so much for watching again, and I shall see you next video. Bye!